few weeks ago, I uploaded part 1 for the making of for my Foolish cosplay from Dream SMP. Then I procrastinated a lot and didn't finish the rest of the cosplay until almost the end of the year, which was fine because it ended up being my 30th cosplay of 2021, which is actually kind of cool, so it works out. But at last, here is part 2, where I show you my chaotic and definitely not professional process of making the rest of the cosplay. It was definitely an adventure, so let's go. Starting off, I had all of the armor pieces done, so now it was time to make the not armor pieces. And if you look at my very skillful drawing, it looks like I needed some dark blue pants with gold bits on them. So to find these blue pants, I went thrifting and I got these pants that had kind of a fishnet pattern on them because the shark thing, fishnets equals sharks. I don't know, it made sense at the time. But I still needed the gold part, so after messing around a bit with some ideas digitally, I sketched on the design with chalk and then used 3D gold fabric paint to draw on all of the details. Nothing super fancy, just enough to make it a little bit more interesting. I added some along the top, the bottom, and then some along the actual leg area on the trousers. Once it dried, it was done! Then it was time to make the shark head hood. To make this, I thought about being professional and using an actual commercial pattern, but then I remembered that I'd made a hooded cape for my Scarlet Witch cosplay, so I just took that hood and traced it onto some blue fabric, then made a vaguely cape-shaped piece to attach to it. I marked and cut the hood twice out of my dark blue fabric, then marked and cut the curved shoulder-length cape piece once. Then, because I wanted to be fancy, I traced the same pieces again onto a lighter blue fabric so that could be the lining. I've never actually really done lining before, so I'm amazed that this worked out as well as it did. The light blue was also originally going to be the top layer, but it actually looked way better with the dark blue on top and the lighter blue as the lining, so that's what I went with. The great thing about designing your own cosplay is that you can change things literally whenever you want. So I first pinned and sewed all of the individual pieces together, laying the actual hood pieces right sides together and sewing along the top and back of it. Then I unfolded it and sewed it right sides together to the actual cape part. I did the same for the lining fabric. Then I laid the lining fabric pieces and the top fabric pieces right sides together, pinned it, and sewed all along the top and sides, leaving the bottom open. Then I turned it right side out and folded over and sewed the bottom edge. Next, I needed to iron it. I used a low heat setting with steam to avoid burning it since it was a pretty flimsy fabric, and then ironed down all the hems and edges. I also took time to iron out all of the wrinkles since this fabric wrinkles ridiculously easily. Even if you don't love doing it like I don't, I highly recommend that you iron the things that you're sewing. It really makes it look a lot more polished and professional. After the ironing, it was time to add some details. To do this, I used gold and white 3D fabric paint, and then drew on a lot of random swirly things all along the edges, making little shark eyes as well. Then I let it fully dry. For the shark teeth, I cut a bunch of triangles out of white craft foam and then hot glued them to the inside of the hood. Was this professional? No, absolutely not. But hey, it worked, so it's fine. I wasn't planning on having to wash this at all since I probably wouldn't wear it that much, so it wasn't something I was worried about. And then voila, the shark hood was done. Now it was time for the skirt. Again, I thought about using a commercial pattern, but where the heck would you find a half-skirt shark tail pattern? You wouldn't, it's not a thing. And anyway, I didn't feel like spending any more money on this. Like, I hardly spent any money on this cosplay. It was very cheap. I already had most of the fabric and foam and everything. Really all I had to buy was the 3D paint. So anyway, instead of an actual pattern, I laid on the fabric and traced myself onto it, and then sketched on the pattern I wanted with chalk, then just cut it out. Then I just had to hold it onto myself in front of the mirror and make adjustments until it looked right. I traced the two half skirt pieces onto the dark blue fabric and then the light blue fabric twice. Next, I sewed the half skirt pieces together to make a full half skirt, which makes a ton of sense, I know. Let's move on. I laid the two finished half skirt pieces on top of each other, right sides together, then pinned them and sewed along the edges, leaving the top waistband part open. I trimmed off some of the seam allowance, then flipped the skirt right side out. I folded over and pinned the waistband and then sewed it closed. This part would be hidden under the belt, so it didn't need to look super professional or finished. Like any of this looks professional, let's be real. Just like for the hood, I then ironed it all out, which I procrastinated doing for a few days because I actually don't like ironing. And I used a low heat setting and steam to avoid burning it, which it did pretty well except for two small bits that may or may not have been burned by drops of water. But anyway, it was fine. The rest of it went great. Then it was time to add details. Looking back at the original drawing I did, it's pretty lax on any sort of detail, so I just kind of matched what I did for the hood. Sketched on ideas by taking a picture of the skirt and drawing on lots of swirls and things digitally. Thank you for this brilliant idea, R31 Studios. This is a method that I use a lot for original design cosplays. And so, lots and lots of 3D puffy paint later, the skirt was done. Now all that was left was to make the actual top for the cosplay. I thought again about being super professional and using a sewing pattern or draping it all fancy on my mannequin, but then I kind of really did want to finish this before the end of the year and I was running out of time, So instead, I cut out 2 large rectangles of the dark blue fabric and then found a way to wrap and tie them around myself by looking up pictures and messing around on my mannequin until I found a suitable top. Then I just wore a black t-shirt under it. Was this professional? Probably not. I mean, the picture I found was somebody selling something like it on the internet, so somebody thought it was professional. But anyway, all I had to do was have 1 large rectangle of fabric and 1 smaller rectangle of fabric, then one of them wraps around my neck and chest and ties in the back, and the other one just wraps around my waist and ties in the back. It's super easy, and all I had to do to make it was fold over the rectangles onto themselves, sew along all the edges, flip it right side out, and then it was pretty much done. It was a super easy piece to make, and I love how it turned out. And then at this point, all of the actual costume pieces were done, so I did a quick fitting test to make sure everything looked okay. It surprisingly did, and I really didn't have to make that many adjustments for it all to look how I wanted it to. And then it was time for the makeup. This part was a lot of fun. I was originally only going to do a makeup test for this cosplay, but then I sketched out a head design for it, and I figured I could just do a quick closet cosplay instead. Then I drew the entire full body design, and I thought, why not? So I made the entire freaking thing over the month of December. Anyway, back to the tutorial. For the makeup, I started out with just a basic face of makeup, foundation, concealer, eyebrows, all of that, and went from there. This is where the vague head drawing that I did actually came in handy. For the eyes, to mimic the emerald effect that Foolish's Minecraft skin has, I used sparkly green eyeshadow heavily on my eyelids and blended out the edges just a little bit. Then over that, I did some fancy winged eyeliner. For my cheekbones, to make some really sharp, unnatural, statue-like contour, I used pencil eyeliner to draw on those really sharp lines, and then lots of gold eyeshadow on top of slightly bronzy brown eyeshadow to mimic the gold effect that I had painted all over the armor. I also did more eyeliner lines and gold eyeshadow on my chin and nose to mimic the same gold statue effect. For my lips, I used black for my top lip and then gold for my bottom. For whatever reason, I really love how black lipstick looks on my top lip, so I do it a lot for cosplay, especially my Dream SMP cosplays. Don't come at me, I like it. But anyway, then the makeup was done. A different look from most of my cosplays, but I really love it. For my hair for this cosplay, I just tucked and pinned my natural hair back out of the way, since it wouldn't really be visible with the hood, and I didn't want to use a wig for this cosplay. And then the entire cosplay was done. Here is the finished result. I had so much fun making this, and I love how it turned out. This also might be my last Dream SMP cosplay for a while, though I'm thinking of making a Dream XD cosplay, because I really want an excuse to make big feathery wings and also make things glow. Is that something you'd actually be interested in seeing a tutorial or walkthrough for? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, I hope you'll subscribe and stick around to see some of my other cosplay videos, and I'll see you all next Friday.